one evening, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past few months. The woman standing at my door was the shadow of the confident person who'd been sneaking around with Jake just a few months earlier. Her hair was messy, her clothes looked like she'd been sleeping in them, and her eyes had that hollow look that comes from not sleeping well for weeks. The conversation that followed was everything I'd expected, and nothing I was prepared for emotionally. Sue started crying before she even began talking, apologizing for everything she'd done, and begging me to consider giving our marriage another chance. She admitted to the affair, claimed she'd ended things with Jake permanently, and insisted that she'd learned from her mistakes. The tears seemed genuine, but I'd watched this woman lie to my face for 8 months, so her acting ability was already well established. She kept saying she loved me, that she'd always loved me, and that the affair had been a terrible mistake brought on by feeling neglected during my recovery. When Sue finished her prepared speech about redemption and second chances, I gave her a response she definitely wasn't expecting. I looked at her tear-stained face and said, "You had your turn. Now it's just my turn." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear traffic from the street outside. She asked what I meant by that, and I explained that she'd had months to enjoy her secret relationship while I sat at home, trusting her completely. Now, I was going to enjoy my freedom while she dealt with the consequences of her choices. The concept of taking turns seemed to confuse her, like she couldn't understand that actions have equal and opposite reactions. Sue's desperation reached new levels when she realized that logical arguments and emotional appeals weren't working. She started making increasingly dramatic statements about how she couldn't live without me, how her life had no meaning if we weren't together, and how she'd rather die than go through with a divorce. The manipulation was so obvious that I almost felt embarrassed for her. I told Sue that if she was genuinely considering hurting herself, she should call a mental health professional, but that her emotional state wasn't going to change my decision about the divorce. Her problems were her problems, and I wasn't responsible for managing her feelings about the consequences of her own actions. The conversation ended with me walking back into my apartment and closing the door while she stood in the hallway crying. I watched through the peephole as she eventually walked away, probably realizing that dramatic gestures weren't going to fix what she'd broken. The aftermath of that final confrontation brought a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Sue stopped trying to contact me through social media, stopped sending messages through mutual friends, and generally seemed to accept that our marriage was over. The divorce papers were finalized 6 months later without any additional drama or attempts at reconciliation. She moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind everything we'd built together over 2 decades. My new life started taking shape in ways I hadn't anticipated. The freedom to make decisions without considering someone else's secret agenda was liberating in unexpected ways. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Nina at a coffee shop and realized that our fake relationship photos had created some real feelings that were worth exploring. The woman who'd helped me drive Sue crazy with jealousy turned out to be someone I genuinely enjoyed spending time with when we weren't staging fake romantic encounters. Our first real date felt like the beginning of something authentic after years of living with someone who'd been performing her entire role in our marriage. The ultimate victory wasn't just escaping from a marriage built on lies and deception. It was discovering that life after betrayal could be better than anything I'd experienced before. Sue had given me the gift of freedom without realizing it, and I was finally ready to use that gift to build something real with someone who actually wanted to be with me. The Shinobi Ghost move had worked perfectly, but the real lesson was something much deeper about how strategic thinking changes everything. Looking back at this whole saga, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad or getting even, it's getting creative. While Sue was busy thinking she was the smartest person in the room, I was quietly building a case that would make her Christmas morning unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. The woman who thought she could juggle 2 relationships discovered that her husband had been juggling evidence collection, legal strategy, and psychological warfare like a professional. In the end, karma's cold dish was wrapped in holiday cheer, and I never looked back. Sue got exactly what she deserved, delivered with perfect timing and maximum impact. Sometimes the universe needs a little help delivering justice, and I was happy to provide the assistance.